Drawing small has its own challenges, but let me just tell you, it is actually a lot easier than having to draw larger sizes. And the reason being is you actually get to accomplish and finish a whole portrait within a reasonable amount of time compared to drawing much larger. So if you are starting out drawing realistically, whether it be pet portraits or people or just animals in general, anything like that, this is definitely going to be an easier setup for you in the long run than having to draw much larger. So getting into it, you can already see that I started with the eyes. Now you want to make sure you have a nice sharp colored pencil point to begin with, and the type of paper also really matters too. You want to have a kind of paper that can hold quite a lot of layers. So I highly suggest something like, if you can get cold pressed watercolor paper, something along those lines is highly suggestible. Now you can also check out the materials list ebook that I have, and it's listed in the description below. But continuing here, so now you can see that I have a lot of layers starting to build up. Now I'm also adding a bit of some contrast between the lighter side and the darker side of this dog here. Now this size is actually a 3" by 3" size. You wouldn't actually know that unless you panned out a little bit more and really saw that, which you'll see in the end here. But working on this now, you can actually see that I am getting it done within a reasonable amount of time. And if you are definitely new to drawing, or you like to get things more completed, if you have ADD and you just cannot focus for very long, something like this is really going to help you in the long run compared to drawing much bigger portraits. So working with something like this, you can see now that I don't have a huge variety of color pencils going in this, but you do want to make sure you have a blend of different colors. That way the variety does show up, because since it is such a smaller portrait, you do want to make sure that it is nice and colorful, even if the animal has, let's say, one type of colored fur. So this one here is actually black fur, but I incorporate many different colors into this fur because there's a lot of variety that really goes into all kinds of fur. So this one here, I use a little bit of some peach tones, I use some browns, I use some black, of course, and then I use some blues and a little bit of purple in there too. So the more variety that you have, the better the outcome will be than if you were to just use a small variety, like just say a set of 5 color pencils. A lot of the time, my left hand, I am holding probably no less than 10 color pencils at a time, because I want to be able to switch between a bunch of them at different times, and I want to make sure that I have them on hand all the time, as often. So the biggest concern a lot of my students have is trying to figure out, like, what kind of coloring should I use in drawing realistically, and so they have a hard time making the decision between, whether they should start with this color or this color. And honestly though, it really doesn't matter ultimately, as long as you're making sure you're building up those layers using lighter colors and then using some of those darker colors afterwards. And then what you can do once you've gotten some of that darker saturation, just like in this video, you can see I'm using lighter colors to kind of create a sense of highlights, but it's not drawing white or super light right on top of it. It's just lightening up what's already there. So that is how you can kind of work a way around figuring out what kind of colors to use, because you kind of already can see, once you train your eyes to look at the portrait and see, all right, so I see some browns, I see some blues, I see some blacks, then you'll start to actually see more variety of colors as you start to trust yourself and trust the process of, okay, so this color comes down and it looks like this. So let's say, for instance, there's a very pale purple color. You wouldn't think you would ever use purple in your portraits, but in some of those highlighted areas, especially in the cooler areas, such as where these, like on the right hand side here, you can see there's some blues in there. You can even incorporate some lighter purples, and what that'll do is create a little bit more of a sense of liveliness or a realistic look, and it kind of brings out some of those tones from some of the other colors that are underneath, if that makes any sense at all. But just trust that kind of process, and definitely allow yourself to make mistakes and play around with different colors, because what that's going to do is expand your mind and your really just your mindset on what kind of like colors can I actually play around with, and what colors am I actually seeing in the portrait too. And if there's a color that maybe you're not seeing in there but you know you should incorporate it, go ahead and try it out and see if it actually looks good. Like you can use greens, purples, pinks in some of these portraits that you just wouldn't think would actually be applied. But because this is different from painting is usually you're adding a layer on top, and you have to kind of mix a couple of colors to get that color, but it's harder to blend as you're adding it on there. This, you are blending all those colors together as you're adding it, so you're going to have that separate color. So let's say like for these ears here, I used a burnt sienna and then one of those lighter pink kind of fleshy tone colors, and incorporated the two of them together to create more of this a little bit of this warmer pinkish red tone. And what that does is it blends it all on the paper itself rather than you blending it beforehand, and so you can actually see the process as it's being applied. And that's the most fun part, the funnest part that you can actually experience with drawing with colored pencils. So now I'm using that Gamsol Mineral Spirit Oil again, and it just really helps to blend it all together, honestly. And then you can go back over and lighten it up and add more details over time. Just make sure your pencils are nice and sharp for those details. I really hope that this video was helpful. Please don't forget to like and subscribe as well. Let me know in the comments below if you have drawn small before, or if you're eager to learn. Let me know. I also have some programs available if you are eager to learn how to draw realistic pet portraits. It is linked in the description below. It's a full-on 8-week program. But thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next one.